Good morning, everyone. Good morning, dear community, MoroccoAI community. It's a big pleasure and an honor to be here today to start this conference after an inspiring and strong opening speech from His Excellency Mr. Riyad Mazoud, the Minister of Industry and Trade, and also Mr. Omar Fassi Fihri with inspiring insights and visions for the future. So it's my pleasure to start the first keynote for this morning of the conference, and we'll start with our speaker Seong Ju Park. So Seong Ju Park is a policy lead on government services at the Public Governance Directorate of the OECD, and a greater believer in making governments work for their citizens. Since joining the OECD, she has been working on various policy areas to support governments to build foundations for a successful digital transformation. Her work focuses on governance for digital governance, government services, the use of AI, and digital talent and skills. So prior to joining the OECD, Seong Ju spent several years working on digital government's policies at the Korean Ministry of the Interior and Safety. Seong Ju holds an LLM in International Legal Affairs and MPs in Diplomacy and Security. The talk today will be entitled Governing with AI, and will explore how AI enhance government services and their impact on citizens. So please will join me in welcoming Seong Ju as she delivers the first keynote for this conference. Seong Ju, welcome, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. Sorry, but there's a really big echo. I hope you can hear. So it will be great.
Is it good now?
Sorry, I hear myself, so maybe if I can use my headset, it will be better. Hello, can you hear me well?
Yes, very good.
Okay. Sorry about that. I thought that we would have tackled this technical issues.
Yeah, a conference without technical issues is not a virtual conference, so it's all good. You can go ahead.
Sorry, sorry, I still have issue of echo.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
There is some echo. Some echo. Some echo. Some echo.
Sorry, I still have echo.
I still have echo. I still have echo.
I think with the headset it works well. You can.
Okay, hopefully this works.
Yeah, that works now. Perfect.
Okay, there's no more echo.
Yeah, all good.
Sorry, it just came back, but I will try my best.
Yeah, we can hear you very well as well.
I hope you can see my screen.
Yes, we can see.
Thank you very much, everyone. And then good morning to you all. I'd like to thank the organizers for inviting the OECD to join the event today. As the OECD has been increasingly focused on the governance of AI, I'm pleased to have the opportunity to share some insights from our ongoing work in this area. So governing with AI is changing the way governments think and operate, and offered opportunities to deliver better services to people. So today, I will quickly touch upon where the OECD has been in the work of AI, and then I will share some of the use cases and then where we are going in terms of the key policy challenges and trends, and how we are supporting the governments in the use of AI in the public sector. And I will touch upon the importance of data. And then I will share with you our future plans for this policy area. So the OECD started looking into how governments should use AI in a responsible and ethical way back in 2019. Our work on policy research, multilateral collaboration, and the measurements allow us to better understand what it is needed for governments to enable the use of AI. And that efforts led to the policy paper highlighting the potential benefits and then risk associated with the use of AI in the public sector. Then we worked together with the G7 countries to develop a toolkit to support policymakers and then public sector leaders in a practical application of AI across the public sector. Then why AI matters for the public sector? So it is common to think that primary role of government on AI as convener, so building agreements around strategic directions and commitments to foster AI. Financial, providing funding to support research, development, and adoption, including through investment funds in AI-driven startups. Or regulators, ensuring policy coherence nationally with underlying values of society and internationally through regulatory cooperation. However, governments are also prime users of AI to improve the functioning of the government and the delivery of public services. So the focus of our work in the OECD Public Governance Directorate is precisely on the role of governments as direct users and service providers of AI, where governments can unleash many benefits, not just for the internal business of governments, but for society as a whole. So we have witnessed that countries around the globe are exploring the use of AI in the public sector to enhance responsiveness to users' needs, reliability in delivering service and policy outcomes, and accountabilities of a public administration. And governments are also concerned about the practical considerations to achieve a responsible, trustworthy, and human-centered use of AI. Compared to the private sector, the public sector has a higher duty of care for ensuring AI in governments is used in a trustworthy, ethical, and human-centric manner. So the OECD Digital Government Index has found that most of the OECD countries have a national strategy or agenda for AI in the public sector. And also, most of the countries have instruments ensuring ethical management of public sector algorithms. As many of you know, the EU adopted the EU AI Act, establishing obligations for AI based on risk and impact levels. And at the national level, Australia has policy tools that aims to provide direction to government officials for the ethical use and management of algorithms. Then how are governments using AI in the public sector at the moment? So the OECD Digital Government Index found that most of governments are using AI to increase internal efficiency and enhance responsiveness of public services. These are some of the examples on how governments are using AI. For instance, in Australia, the Department of Environment and Science of the Queensland government is using AI to reduce the duration of statewide mapping of land use. In Colombia, AI is supporting the government with the bidder selection process for childhood service providers. In Austria, AI-based chatbot is supporting more efficient service delivery to the citizens. So these use cases show how AI can be instrumental for improving efficiency of internal operations, increasing government's reliability towards citizens. We also have seen governments using AI beyond improving internal efficiencies. I won't go through every single use case, but for instance, in Korea, the Disease Control and Prevention Agency developed an AI convergence system to address future infectious disease and support the government to design policies to prevent future crises. Also, the OECD Digital Government Index found that over a third of OECD countries still lack key AI oversight and ethical advisory bodies. So these are some of the examples that we have seen. In Norway, US, there are oversight bodies to make sure that AI is used in an ethical and a responsible way across the public sector. And we expect the EU's AI Act will provide a new governance framework for the EU and then also partner countries, the same oversight and ethical function to make sure that the governments are using AI in a trustworthy manner. So we have seen governments using AI. However, the use of AI in the public sector has raised numerous questions regarding its responsible application and the need for the requisite tools to guide them in a use of AI in a trustworthy manner. So here you can see some of the emerging policy issues and challenges that we have witnessed among the OECD countries. So we have noticed that still many governments are struggling to secure political support from the decision makers and the public to increase the use of AI in the public sector. An increased use of AI from the public sector is raising concerns about how to anticipate and manage the accompanying risk for a fair, ethical, and inclusive application of AI. So worries around the respect of human rights, privacy, algorithmic transparency, accountability, and explainability, among others, are pressuring governments to find ways to anticipate and manage such risk. Additionally, we have also found that governments are using AI proactively to anticipate people's needs and respond to them rapidly. It still remains very experimental, and we have seen few solutions that scale up from the experiment. Finally, countries are questioning how to monitor the effectiveness of policies for AI in the public sector and assessing their implementation impact is crucial to foster trust and consequently ensure their long-term sustainability. So from the OECD Digital Government Index, we have found a few cases where the countries are starting to answer to these policy issues. So in order to support the OECD and partner countries to scale up the AI use and then make sure that governments are benefiting from the potential of the AI while mitigating risk, the OECD introduced a policy framework to enable governments to use AI in a trustworthy and then responsible way. So this framework you see on the screen seeks to provide guidance to countries on their journey towards the use of AI in the public sector. The framework first delves into a set of three key principles. The first, levels of engagement. This includes the different stakeholders that needs to be engaged in building the foundation for a responsible use of AI in the public sector. And they include actors across the government in policy areas and in broader ecosystem and beyond national jurisdictions to facilitate cross-border cooperation. Then we have set of enablers. So enablers include areas where policy actions can be prioritized to establish a solid enabling environment and unlock the full-scale adoption of AI in the public sector. And last, we have guardrails. So guardrails include options for policy levers that governments can consider developing for a responsible, trustworthy, and human-centric use of AI in the public sector. This includes soft laws, guidance, standards, policies, enforcement mechanisms, and oversight bodies. So we can dive further into each component of the framework. So under enablers, we highlighted that it's needed to have a robust governance and capabilities and collaboration and partnerships. So we have noticed that many governments, despite having a strategic direction on the use of AI across the public sector, they're still lacking common standards to make sure that the AI is used in a coherent manner across the different levels of government. And also, the absence of the flexible governance model sometimes hinders the development and the experiment of the use of AI across the public sector. And importantly, still, there's absence of a risk management to make sure that AI is used in a way to minimize associating risk that I mentioned before. And capabilities. We have noticed in most of the governments, they're still lacking the sufficient competencies to develop, experiment, and implement AI-driven services and solutions. And also collaboration and partnerships. Governments cannot do everything by themselves. They need to build strategic partnerships with the private sector and academia to make sure the AI is used to bring the potential benefits to the citizens and businesses. However, in current environment, it is quite difficult for governments to step into those strategic partnerships, working closely together with the private sector outside of the traditional procurement methods. And now we will look at guardrails for AI in the public sector. So governments need to have these guardrails in place to make sure that governments are minimizing the risk when they're using AI. So first, governments need to adopt a common standard to secure the ethical use of AI. And these also include developing common policies that needs to be implemented at the different levels of governments. And governments need to set up an oversight monitoring bodies, such as AI committees, to oversee the adoption of AI initiatives and ensure alignment with the ethical guidelines to increase the trust from the public on the use of AI. In order for governments to scale up the use of AI, they need to work together with different actors. So the slide you see shows how governments need to engage with different key actors within and outside of the public administration. And here it is important for governments to build collaborative relationships with different governments and then also international organizations to make sure that the use of AI is following the international standards, guidelines, as many governments foresee the cross-border use of AI in the near future. We cannot talk about AI without talking about data. Data is one of the most important factors in the use of AI across the public sector. So I will quickly touch upon how OECD countries have been progressing on building robust data governance. Sorry about that. So the graph shows different categories measuring data maturity in the OECD Digital Government Index. So in general, OECD countries have progressed in setting the foundations of a data-driven public sector across the policy cycle. However, we found that more efforts is needed, in particular in the implementation and the monitoring stage. We also saw opportunities for governments to improve in making more strategic use of AI, particularly setting data to be able to use to anticipate and plan government interventions, and then to be used to design and deliver digitally enabled government services, and also strengthening policy monitoring. So why is data important? Because data quality, data relevance, and the availability, they link directly to the successful use of AI across the public sector. the AI system can benefit from diverse data to avoid any biases, and properly labeled data will help governments to supervise learning tasks, and then up-to-date data to ensure accurate analysis. And this should happen while considering data privacy, security, and ethics. To be able to handle data in a responsible way, and also using data in compliance with any national, international regulations. And policymakers need to consider the complexity and then variety of data types. For instance, data for AI can be gathered by humans or automated sensors, and can include expert input, provided data, observed data, synthetic data, or derived data. Data also varies in its dynamic nature, from static data to dynamic real-time data, and its scale ranging from very large data sets to small data sets. Additionally, data may be proprietary, public, including open data, or personal. For data and input containing personal information, the data can be identifiable, anonymized, pseudonymized, or aggregated. So these complexities and efforts required to make data fit for AI. And here on the screen, you see a whole of government data governance model to support access and sharing of data in an ethical manner. So the OECD's data governance framework highlights organizational, policy, and technical aspects that can help governments bring clarity and structure to how they conceive and implement their own data governance frameworks. So it is essential that governments continues to work on the development and adoption of shared standards in openness, governance, and data management. And data sharing solutions, including technologies and framework, facilitate the secure exchange and access of data across different organizations, platforms, and sectors. And this supports data-driven decision-making, and then make sure that data sets are available to train AI models. So looking ahead, this shows the future work of OECD on AI in the public sector. We have been working closely with the OECD and the partner countries to better understand best practices, and this will inform countries' AI agenda in a practical manner. And also, OECD is planning to publish the larger, broader report based on the policy paper we produced this year that shows how AI is used in different policy areas. For instance, the report will highlight use cases and then key considerations for the use of AI in the justice sector, health sector, tax areas, giving governments policy recommendations and then practical guidance based on government's experience. So this report will give you more detailed use cases, more considerations for the use of AI across the public sector. We hope to share with you the report in February 2025, And I hope we can continue this conversation to make sure that governments are using AI to deliver trustworthy services and make sure that they're using AI to enhance how government works, how government interact with their citizens and businesses. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Seong Ju, for the insightful talk. I think, yeah, this topic is of important. It's an important topic, and it's very urgent to address it from different perspectives, especially at the governmental level. So we have a few questions here. So we have one question saying, given AI importance, how can governments balance between innovation, ethical, and legal challenges, as well as comply with the regulations of the country or the region, like in Europe, for example, or North Africa or Africa?
Thank you, Hakim. I think the question was how North African governments can balance the potential of AI and then the risk.
Yeah, exactly. From given the importance of AI, from the ethical and legal, and also the regulations, how can we balance that in order to bring the benefits of AI?
So many governments are starting with a low risk use cases with AI. This would help them understand the associating risk and that impact that AI can bring. And after understanding that, then governments will be able to scale up to a bit more of a mid or high risk use of AI. And also, I'd like to highlight that it's not just the Northern African countries. Still, many countries around the world are trying to understand associating risk and then benefits, and then they're going through this decision-making process where the use of AI is actually worth putting risk in serving citizens and businesses. So to mitigate the potential risk while benefiting from AI, many governments have started to establish the guidelines and then oversight mechanisms to make sure that government stays accountable and they learn from their success stories, but also you need to learn from failures so that you don't repeat the same errors.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, in Korea, the Personal Information Protection Commission has worked together with not only with the actors from the public sector, but also private sector, academia, and citizens to come up with a set of guidelines when governments are using data to train their AI models. Because these days, data governments can collect or any private sector can collect is ranging from a simple data inputted by citizens, but then also data collected through different cameras of our phones, of the CCTVs. So having this agreed guidelines across the public and private sector will make sure that everyone who's using AI is following the ethical principles and then requirements set by the governments.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting. Do you think this applies also in the low or constrained environments, like in, as you said, in Africa, or constrained environments / countries, or when we're talking about the resources in order to adopt or deploy or develop AI?
I think every country, so many countries share this challenge of understanding the impact and then the risk associated with AI. However, what governments need to consider when learning from others is that you need to understand your own national context. So I think this would require engagements of different actors nationally and also internationally to understand what key contextual factors that you need to understand to come up with policy levers, guardrails, enablers that works for your own country. We are not saying that one fits all. The OECD has been supporting governments with the policy tools and framework to show where they need to pay attention. So it depends on each government. However, we believe that each government needs to focus on what are the enablers for the use of AI, what are the key guardrails that you need to have in place, and then what are the key actors that you need to engage. This can differ from country by country, but these are things that governments needs to think and then agree upon together with different actors within and outside of the government.
Interesting. Thank you so much. On the challenges aspects, in your perspective, what are the main challenges in adopting AI in the public sector when we compare it to the private sector?
So I have a few. I think the biggest challenge that we see now is that at the moment, public sector is struggling to secure and attract, retain necessary skills and talent to understand AI and then use AI in the public sector. So here, many governments are starting to upskilling their current public sector workforce, as in many countries, I'm sure it's same in Morocco, that often governments are struggling to compete with the private sector in terms of incentives for these skilled workers to join the public sector. So we also have seen, so while governments focus on upskilling their current workforce, we have seen governments working together with academia and then private sector to better understand use of AI and then actually implement AI across the public sector. So we foresee that this will continue, and this will bring bigger needs for governments to have the right standards, right guidelines, as they will need to work with the private sector actor. And another challenge we see is that many are trying to use AI, but for what? Because we often saw that sometimes what governments are trying to resolve doesn't require the use of AI. So I think we need to make sure that we communicate the needs of using AI to our leadership so that the leaders stay away from just pushing for the use of AI for the sake of the technology. Governments need to make sure that they always stay focused on the challenge that they face and then see whether or not AI can be useful. We have seen many governments struggling to convince their leadership that they need to focus more on the challenge rather than the technology. So this is also a big challenge, and then also important challenge that we see, as we believe that governments always need to put people's needs at the core, not the technology itself. And also the last challenge I want to mention is that many many government agencies, also local governments, they have ideas to use AI to better their service design and delivery. However, still at the moment, financing of these efforts is very limited. So the government, the public sector is struggling with the experimentation of AI, which means that they're even slower in scaling up their efforts to the wider public sector.
Yeah. I think that all these insights and points that you mentioned are very important. The upskilling, the cultural and environmental context that we should address are all of great importance. We have another question about the trust. So when we talk about building AI for governance or governments adopting AI, so there should be a trust between the governments and citizens. From your perspective, how do you see this trust building given the issues of data privacy, transparency, accountability, and many more?
So the reason why I touched upon data during my presentation is that without data, there's no AI. Sorry, I thought I stopped sharing my screen. Sorry. No,
Yeah.
sorry about that.
That's better, yeah. No worries.
Yes, so without data, there's no AI. So data is essential for the use of AI. That means that before we even talk about AI, governments need to focus on building robust data governance. So this includes making sure that there are right policy frameworks, legal and regulatory tools to ensure and then give confidence in our people that government is managing their data in an ethical manner. I think we need to start from there because, so I come from a country where people's trust in government is quite low because we went through dictatorships where there was a very tight control over people's freedom. So naturally, there's this distrust in government. And how my country trying to tackle that is to have concrete measures in place and then explain the measure to the citizens. So look, this is the regulation that we are working on to make sure that government is using your data in a trustworthy manner. And government opens up all the processes and they make everything public so that people can go and then see what are the measures in place. And it starts to build trust in government trust in government with their data. So I think it should start from governments working on building a robust data governance, not only building them, but communicating them to the citizens and making sure that they're part of this conversation, making the process open and transparent, participatory, so that they have the shared ownership and they can have a strong belief in government's actions. And this will make it easier for governments to communicate the needs of AI in the public sector, as there will be already built trust on data management by the public sector.
Yeah, thank you so much, Seong Ju. We have many other questions, but for the sake of time, I think I will leave you the floor for a final word for the MoroccoAI community. Or Morocco, the floor. You are free to give a final thought, final note.
So I had a pleasure of working with the Moroccan justice sector on digital transformation and then also use of AI. And I think Morocco is in a really good position where the public sector is eager to transform its public sector and then use emerging technologies to make sure that they deliver better services for the citizens and businesses. And it is with many skilled people working in the public sector. I just want to leave my session by highlighting the point that I already mentioned before. Although we are talking about technology and then digital transformation, the most important thing is people. So without people, we cannot have successful digital transformation. We cannot have successful AI applications across the public sector. We need to put the needs of our citizens, businesses at the core. And then also we need to make sure everyone working in the public sector understand the value and then the risk associated with the use of AI, and make sure that we build shared vision and direction on the use of AI across the public sector. So although we are talking about technology, I just want to say people is the key, and that we cannot forget about that. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Seong Ju, for this insightful last note. People are the key. People are at the core of every strategy. So with these notes, we'll end this session. Dear attendees, please stay connected where we have many keynote talks for the day. See you soon.